Hi folks, it's Teresa at Stringfield Ridge Farm. I had an incident happen that got me to thinking about cold and flu season, and I'm going to show you a couple of tips to get through the cold and flu season. I just had something I wanted to share with you today. I have talked before in my last video about having a boot on my foot for I have a stress fracture in my ankle and I have a boot. Well, I had went to the pharmacy yesterday and asking her about if there was a smaller boot I could wear around the house or into bed, because this big heavy boot is cumbersome and I hated wearing it at the house. So she showed me, yes, there was another little boot that's smaller that just is an ankle brace that I could wear around the house when I'm not doing much and to bed, and would help out some. So that being beside the point, while I was in there, a guy was in there getting medicine, and he was telling her that he had had a lingering cold and cough that just kept going. He thought he was over it and it kept coming back, and she was saying that it is cold and flu season. So she said, yeah, a lot of people have a sickness right now, colds or flus or what have you, and he said he just couldn't shake his, and he said that someone told him about a elderberry syrup. He was trying to think of the name of it. It was, I guess, a brand name of elderberry syrup, and he'd never heard of it before. He'd never even heard of using elderberry syrup before, but someone had told him about this certain brand of elderberry syrup that you could use that would help boost your immune system this time of year, and help get him over this cold that kept coming back. And he was telling this pharmacist this, and she was kind of, I guess, iffy about it anyways. But he said he couldn't think of the name of it, and I'm standing there and overhearing all this. I said, well, I make my own elderberry syrup every year. And he kind of gave me a look, and so did the pharmacist. And I said, elderberries grow wild all over the place around here. You can get elderberries and cook it down and make your own syrup. And needless to say, him and the pharmacist both just acted like I was totally crazy. So, and I've been doing that every year for, years, and so I didn't think anything about it. But apparently the pharmacist didn't like me saying it too well, maybe, and he thought I was crazy, and so I left it alone and walked away. And I thought, where we live, we are in western Kentucky, and elderberries grow wild all over the place here. We have an abundant amount of elderberries on our farm, and so I even I make elderberry jam and elderberry syrup every year, and I even freeze some. I will freeze some of the elderberries, also dry them. I dry elderberries and use those make elderberry tea. And when they're dried, I can use them for whatever, but I use them for elderberry tea during the winter time, to help kind of boost my immune system. And I usually take the elderberry syrup. I usually just take the elderberry syrup when I know there's a lot of cold going around, or I get a cold. I get a cough or something, then I'll start taking it more. But I have elderberries frozen in the freezer that I can pull out and make elderberry syrup if I run out. But I thought, to me, when we do these things, we take it for granted and we don't realize that some people don't have a clue. So one thing I was going to touch on right here today, in case there is someone watching who doesn't know, elderberries grow wild. I'm going to show pictures of those. We have several of our videos that show our elderberries growing on our property in our videos. So if you go back and watch some of those, and you can see in a lot of our videos during the summertime videos where we show those. So you can find them, I'm sure. And I read that they grow all over America. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the central area. I don't know for sure, but look it up and see if it grows in your area. And if it does, then in the spring you can go out, if you know what get a picture of what the flowers look like. And they're edible too. You can use and eat the flowers. I have seen recipes where they take the flowers and make flour out of them, and I've seen where they take them and batter them and fry them. There's just all different kinds of things you can do with them, but the main thing we use them for is elderberry jam and elderberry syrup. And the elderberry syrup, you can use that on pancakes, or you can take it. I would make it sweeter if you were going to use it for pancakes, and not as sweet if you were just going to take it for medicinal purposes. But I thought I would go over that a little bit of using elderberry syrup, making elderberry syrup. So, and I thought I would talk a little bit about cold and flu season. There's lots of things you can do, especially during cold and flu season. You want to be healthier, get plenty of rest, eat healthy, and take elderberry syrup or fire cider. I'm not going to go into fire cider here, but if you don't know about fire cider, look that up. We did make some this year. This is the first year we've tried the fire cider. We did make some, and we've used it a few times because we knew colds were going around. So we've been taking just a teaspoon a day of that, and a teaspoon a day of the elderberry syrup to keep us from getting the colds. But if you do get the cold or flu, just make sure you get plenty of rest and eat simple foods like especially broth, chicken broth. That's why they talk about chicken noodle soup when you're, which I don't do noodles. So chicken broth, any broth actually, bone broth is wonderful. There's just, the things that you can do for cold flu, and use lots of onions and garlic, which we do anyway. We use a lot of onions and garlic anyways, but especially during the winter, during the cold and flu seasons. So you want to make sure your elderberries are black. That's the only kind I've ever seen, is the blue-black elderberry. That's the only kind I've ever seen, but I know that they say there is a red elderberry that has some toxins in it or something. So you want to stay away from that and just be sure you're getting the blue-black elderberry. It looks black, but when you squish it, it can kind of look purplish colored. But they look black on the, when they're fully ripe, they look black. And so they say that's the only kind to get. But that's the only kind we have that I've seen around here. So for a small batch, all you need is 1 cup of fresh or dried or frozen elderberries to 3 cups of water. Start that to boil, and then turn it down to simmer for about an hour. And you can smash those a little. I don't like smashing them too much because they can get a little bitter, but I would smash them a little in there after they've boiled a little bit, kind of smash them around a little bit. They are kind of bitter, so I don't smash them too hard, too much. But so you're going to boil that down for about an hour, and then you're going to strain that off and let that cool some. It can still needs to be warm. So then you're going to put a cup of honey in there. So you want it to cool down some so it doesn't affect the honey, but you want it warm enough to get the honey good melted in there with it. And just stir that around good. So I use a quart jar and then stick it in the refrigerator. And then during the winter or during cold and flu season, when you start hearing that people have a cold, you could take it anytime if you want it to. You could take it all the time if you want it to. We usually wait until it's winter time and we start hearing of people having colds. So then we start taking a teaspoon a day. If we do happen to get a cold or a cough, I have taken it before and still gotten a little bit of a cold. But I truly believe that if you are taking it and you do get a cold because you got, right up to the germs and got the cold anyway, I think that it will be lessened. It won't be as bad of a cold or last as long. So we will take a teaspoon a day. And then if we do get the cold, we start taking it 3 times a day. And same with the fire cider. If you look up the fire cider and start doing that, we're doing the same thing with that. We haven't had to take it 3 times a day. We've been taking the elderberry and the fire cider once in the morning, and we haven't had the colds yet. So the other thing I wanted to go over, the elderberry was brought up because of the incident at the pharmacy, but you can also add ginger into that. You can take and while you're boiling that, cut up some ginger root and add in there, and that makes it even that much better. You can also do ginger and echinacea root. So the thing you would do with that, you would do one part echinacea root and 1 part ginger, and boil that in a quart of water, and boil that down until it is just about a pint. You're going to boil that down a whole lot and just let it boil away until it's about a pint. And then same thing, you can strain that off and let it cool some, and then add your honey or sweetener, whatever you want to add. Honey is the best to add, best to use, because honey has a lot of benefits too. And then same thing with the elderberry syrup with it. You would put it in a jar and put it in the refrigerator and use that, once a day, and use that, instead of the elderberry syrup if you didn't have the elderberries. So there's an alternative if you can't find elderberries. And I made a few notes. I'm checking my notes. Okay, I guess that's it. So there's 2 ways to make something that will help you. I'm not going to go into the fire cider. Look that up though. We're trying that this year, and I hear it's really good too. Elderberry syrup, ginger echinacea syrup, fire cider, any of those you can make yourself every year and have it through the winter for the cough and cold and flu season, and will help you out. And I guess I take for granted that a lot of people that watch this, that are in the homesteading community, know those things, but there are people who don't, that might get to watch this. So If you have any other tips for the elderberry syrup or the ginger echinacea syrup or fire cider, please feel free to leave those in the comments, and give us a thumbs up, subscribe, comment, and thanks for watching.